I direct start from water gas, syngas, because preparation of hydrogen, about hydrogen and reactions of hydrogen, many of those have been removed, reduced. Now, what is water gas? Water gas is actually mixture of carbon monoxide and hydrogen. Memorize this. This water gas is also known as syngas or synthesis gas. Synthesis gas is seldom written. Okay? Mostly it is written as water gas or syngas. Syngas is short form of synthesis gas. The mixture of carbon monoxide and hydrogen is called syngas, okay, or water gas. How it is prepared? When any hydrocarbon, for example, here we can take alcohol also, is hydrolyzed. And temperature, remember, this temperature range is sometimes asked. That's why it is important. 1270 K, 1270 K. You get carbon monoxide and hydrogen. For hydrolysis of any hydrocarbon, this is the generic reaction. If you remember, I told you the generic reaction for combustion of hydrocarbons also. Okay, this one is for hydrolysis of hydrocarbons. From this reaction, you can get hydrolysis of any hydrocarbon. So memorize this one also as you did for combustion reaction. I'll ask, and at that time you should be able to tell me the reaction. So memorize. Yes, Shashwat, you got that correct. CXHY plus X plus Y by 4, O2 gives you XCO2 and Y by 2 H2O. That is the generic reaction for combustion of hydrocarbons. Here, hydrolysis of hydrocarbons. Generic reaction for hydrolysis. So if you see, I replaced N by 1. N is 1. So here you got C1H4, that is CH4. Here you got 1. Here you got 1. 2N plus 1, that is 2 plus 1, 3. So you can write reaction for any alkane at least here. So this one is specifically for alkane. Now, coal gasification, there is another process, coal gasification. The process of producing syngas from coal is called coal gasification. So this is the name of the process. This whole reaction is known as coal gasification. And the name is actually because coal from solid gets converted to gases. That's why it is gasification of coal. That's the name. That's why the name, coal gasification. So, and that's a way to remember also that in coal gasification, actually you are converting solid coal to gases. And again here you get the syngas or water gas. The two methods we are talking about. First is from alkanes, hydrocarbons, methanols, okay. Then second, from coal, and this reaction has been given a specific name, coal gasification. A water gas shift reaction. This is not for the production. Rather, when we produce the syngas, after that, we can increase the yield of products. We can increase the yield of products. That's what is water gas shift reaction. So this carbon monoxide is being produced in both of the previous reactions, whether method from the hydrocarbons, methanol, or method from the coal. In both cases, you are getting carbon monoxide, okay? Because this is mixture of carbon monoxide and hydrogen, which is known as syngas. What we do, the carbon monoxide produced is treated. So that's what is written. The production of dihydrogen can be increased. Basically, our main purpose is to produce hydrogen. That's the chapter about. Okay. This mixture is known as syngas. That's fine. But our main aim is to get hydrogen. And how we can increase the yield of hydrogen? We can use the carbon monoxide produced and get it reacted with steam at very high temperature, 673 Kelvin. Then it again gives us hydrogen. So from, for example, if I consider coal gasification, from carbon and water, we got some hydrogen. Then we used this carbon monoxide with water and we again got hydrogen. So it means the production of hydrogen is doubled. Means water gas reaction is shifted in forward direction. This is known as water gas or syngas. So this water gas produced is used again carbon monoxide from it and the reaction is moved in forward direction again. So that's why the name here, water gas shift reaction. The reaction shifts in the forward direction. The yield of hydrogen is doubled. So remember what is water gas shift reaction. Very important reaction in this chapter. So 3 points we have discussed till now, out of which first 2 related to production of hydrogen. In both cases, syngas is produced. Whether we use methanol, hydrocarbons, or we use coal. We can use this carbon dioxide produced and again reacted with steam at very high temperature, 673 K. We can increase the yield of hydrogen. That is known as water gas shift reaction, the third part. Now, hard and soft water. This is something you should know from your previous grades, but chemically how we differentiate, that's what we will be discussing. So presence of calcium and magnesium salts. Remember, we are talking about only calcium and magnesium, no other metal salt. Okay. Salts of calcium and magnesium, and that too hydrogen carbonate, chloride, and sulfate only. They cause hardness in the water. Hard water does not give lather with soap. Water free from soluble salts of calcium and magnesium is called soft water. So if there are no such salts, it will be soft water. Now we will be talking about permanent and temporary hardness. Okay. Before that, I should explain it here. Now, if I talk about calcium and magnesium, hydrogen carbonate is same as bicarbonate. Okay. So the possible compounds will be calcium carbonate, magnesium carbonate, sorry, bicarbonate, not carbonate, bicarbonate or hydrogen carbonate, same thing. Calcium chloride, magnesium chloride, calcium sulfate, magnesium sulfate. Only these salts will cause hardness in the water. Now, out of which the bicarbonates cause temporary hardness. These cause permanent hardness. Now, the difference is that temporary hardness can be removed by boiling. That is the difference. So in both cases, calcium and magnesium will be there, whether it is temporary or permanent. But in case of temporary, will be hydrogen carbonates. In case of permanent, these will be chlorides and sulfates. Yes, what we are talking about here, the soap only. Okay, detergents have slightly different characteristics. Okay, we will be talking about that. Shashwat. So soft water gives lather with soap. Hard water forms scum or precipitate with soap. That's why it does not give lather. So soap containing sodium stearate, you can remember this formula, sometimes it is asked. And anyway, when we will be talking about missile formation, those in 12th standard, you have to remember these. So it's better that you remember these now. You memorize these now. Sodium stearate C17H35COO and A reacts with hard water to precipitate out calcium and magnesium stearate. This is the reaction. Sodium stearate, which is present in soap, and this is meant to dissolve the grease, dirt, oil, etc. But if there is hardness present, for example, calcium chloride. So calcium chloride is written as Ca2 plus. Magnesium chloride or magnesium sulfate are written as Mg2 plus. So this is a way to write. Similarly, calcium sulfate, Ca2 plus. Because these will be dissociated in their ions. So that's why in ionic form, MgCl2 will be written as just Mg2 plus. So in this reaction, when it is written as M2 plus means it is either Ca2 plus or Mg2 plus. Now, because hard water will contain calcium and magnesium ions, these will react with the soap, sodium stearate, and produce a precipitate. So if soap reacts with Ca2 plus and Mg2 plus and precipitates, so obviously cleaning action will not take place. Or at least the effect of soap will reduce because some sodium stearate will get precipitated by the calcium and magnesium ions present in the water. So important reaction, if you have or if you are asked to define or explain how the hardness is responsible for not producing the lather. The hardness of water is of two types, temporary and permanent hardness, as we talked about it. Temporary hardness is by hydrogen carbonates only, that is either calcium bicarbonate or magnesium bicarbonate. Yes, Arohi, correct. Here, calcium and magnesium stearate is precipitate. So this will be either calcium stearate or magnesium stearate, which precipitates out. Now, how we can remove temporary hardness? By simply boiling. If water is hard, we boil, the salts will get precipitated. Second is Clark's method. So during boiling, the soluble magnesium hydrogen carbonate is converted into magnesium hydroxide and calcium hydrogen carbonate is changed to calcium carbonate. Now, there's very good question here. Why magnesium hydrogen carbonate is converted to hydroxide and calcium hydrogen carbonate is converted to carbonate? Okay. So these are the reactions. First, memorize the reaction and then we will discuss why the difference is there. In both cases, carbon dioxide is evolved. So we are just heating, nothing else. And because bicarbonates are present, carbon, carbon, that is responsible for production of carbon dioxide. Okay. Now the reason. It is because of high solubility of product of MgOH whole twice, magnesium hydroxide, as compared to that of MgCO3. So MgOH whole twice, magnesium hydroxide is more soluble, okay, as compared to magnesium carbonate. That's why high solubility product here. Solubility product we will be talking about in the chapter equilibrium. Okay, towards the end of the chapter. At the moment, you can understand that if solubility product is high, then it will get precipitated. If ionic concentration is high, then it will get precipitated. So this is basically the answer if you are asked that why these two equations are different. Solubility product, more about it. Okay, even if I explain, you won't understand unless we go through the equilibrium chapter. So just try to memorize at the moment that high solubility product of MgOH whole twice as compared to magnesium carbonate. That's why magnesium hydroxide is precipitated. These precipitates can be removed by filtration. Filtrate thus obtained will be soft water. Second, Clark's method. So first one is very easy. Just you boil and temporary hardness will be removed. Important are 2 points, the reactions and why magnesium hydroxide is precipitated in case of magnesium bicarbonate, and in case of calcium bicarbonate, calcium hydroxide is not precipitated, rather calcium carbonate is precipitated. Second, Clark's method. In this method, calculated amount of lime is added to hard water. Calculated amount of lime is added to hard water. And in hard water, temporary hardness will have only bicarbonates, hydrogen carbonates. It precipitates out calcium carbonate and magnesium hydroxide, which can be filtered off. Now remember, here also calcium carbonate and magnesium hydroxides are being precipitated, but in magnesium, calcium carbonate is also getting precipitated. The reason is we are using calcium hydroxide for precipitation. So the reactions are slightly different and you have to memorize. Unfortunately, in inorganic chemistry, like organic chemistry, you have patterns, named reactions. It is easier to remember the reactions. But in inorganic chemistry, unfortunately, you don't have those type of patterns. 80% times you will have to memorize the reactions. Have notebook, pen, write these reactions right now. Okay, whenever your mind says that I'll write it later on, ask your mind, why not right now? I know that many students are not writing. That's why I have to say that. Ask your mind, why not now? If there is no reason, then right now. Permanent hardness. So permanent hardness again due to same metals, but the anions are different now. Chlorides and sulfates in water. Permanent hardness cannot be removed by boil. To remove permanent hardness, we have these four different methods. Treatment with washing soda, that is sodium carbonate. Calgon's method, ion exchange method, and synthetic resins method. Ion exchange method and synthetic resins method, these are actually similar. Okay, it depends on what resin we are using. Here, some substances which are known as resin we are using, but the effect is almost same. Okay, Shashwat, just a second. This is the previous slide. Okay, this one. Okay. So these four methods you need to remember. You can use to remove permanent hardness. For temporary hardness, two methods, and in both you have two reactions. Whether it is boiling or whether it is Clark's method, two reactions you have to memorize. Treatment with washing soda, that is sodium carbonate. What happens that whether it is chloride impurity or whether it is sulfate impurity, M is calcium or magnesium. Okay. Impurity in the form of chloride or sulfate will have permanent hardness. When we get these reacted with sodium carbonate, that is washing soda, then carbonate gets attached to the metal and chloride or sulfate get attached to the sodium. So it is also a type of ion exchange. We just don't call it ion exchange. This is also ion exchange. Ions are being exchanged. So treatment with washing soda is a type of ion exchange, but we don't call it like that, has been given a separate name. Similarly here, sulfate will get attached to sodium, carbonate will get attached to metal. Now, because there is no magnesium chloride or calcium chloride or magnesium sulfate, calcium sulfate, hardness is removed. Carbonates, for example, MgCO3 or CaCO3, they do not cause hardness. Only bicarbonate, chlorides, and sulfates of calcium and magnesium will cause hardness. So, because now we don't have chloride sulfates, that's why no hardness. Second, Calgon's method. So, this is basically compound Calgon, sodium hexametaphosphate. Sodium hexametaphosphate is known as Calgon. When added to hard water, the following reaction takes place. So first sodium tetraphosphate metaphosphate ion is produced. You don't need to remember the name, okay? You don't need, nobody is going to ask you the name of that. But first it gets ionized in water. Okay. Then after that, Mg2 plus or Ca2 plus from magnesium chloride or calcium chloride or magnesium sulfate, calcium sulfate reacts with this one, this ionized anion, and forms a complex. This is known as complex. again, now there is no calcium chloride, calcium sulfate, hardness is removed. Remember, this method is also a type of ion exchange. Basically, all the methods are ion exchange, but the third one we call as ion exchange. So here also we exchanged the ion. And hardness got removed. Memorize the reactions. All these methods, only you need to remember is the reaction. Okay, David. In this reaction, what's happening that we are using sodium hexametaphosphate. So this is sodium hexametaphosphate. Okay. In water, it gets ionized. So when it is ionized, anion is produced. This anion and magnesium sulfate, for example, or magnesium chloride, this also gets ionized. So anion of sodium hexametaphosphate and cation of the impurity, magnesium sulfate, magnesium chloride, calcium chloride, cation. These two combine. This is either Mg2 plus or Ca2 plus. This combines with the anion. And they combine to form a complex. So now because there is no magnesium sulfate or calcium sulfate, calcium chloride, magnesium chloride, hardness is removed. These complexes are precipitated and filtered out. So there are, okay, they were good. So there are just similar processes I am talking about again and again, okay, very similar process. For example, in previous one I talked about then that metal ion combined with some anion, here carbonate, okay, that's why the impurity removed. Impurity, when I say impurity, I'm talking about calcium chloride, calcium sulfate, magnesium sulfate, okay, or in case of temporary hardness, magnesium bicarbonate, calcium bicarbonate also. Similarly, here what we do, we add sodium hexametaphosphate, it ionizes. So it is similar to this reaction, this one. The anion part gets attached to metal. Here also, the anion part gets attached to metal. Anion part of the substance we have added gets attached to metal. Is that clear? And another substance is formed. That's how the impurity is removed. Ion exchange method. Now in ion exchange method, specifically we will be talking about zeolite or permutate. Similar, very similar process, okay? Very similar process. Zeolite is basically sodium aluminum silicate when we get it treated with water. So if I say Na aluminum SiO4 and some water molecules are attached to it, then sodium aluminum silicate is known as zeolite or permutate. Okay, so effectively it is sodium aluminum silicate, simple. Now for simplicity in the reactions, and that is very much common and that has been followed in NCERT also, aluminum silicate part is replaced by Z. It is just written as Z. So this is cation part. This is Z. Z is actually AlSiO4, aluminum silicate. NaZ. Okay, don't say NaZ, it is NaZ. When this is added in hard water, again exchange reaction takes place, similar to what we have already done. This anionic part gets attached to metal ions, similar to the one as carbonate got attached. Of the magnesium chloride, calcium chloride, magnesium sulfate, calcium sulfate, whatever it is. So this M2 plus can be Na4, calcium chloride, magnesium chloride, calcium sulfate, or magnesium sulfate. From this, it can be either Ca2 plus or Mg2 plus from these. But because these ions will get converted to another compound, MZ2, that's why impurity will be removed, hardness will be removed. Now we don't need to have too much permutate or zeolite because we can regenerate. So once we precipitate out MZ2, MZ2 will be either MgAlSiO4 or calcium aluminium silicate, magnesium aluminium silicate or calcium aluminium silicate. Z is AlSiO4 and M is either Mg or Ca. So once we get this, we can regenerate permutate or zeolite by simply getting it reacted with salt, plain salt, NaCl, sodium chloride. You again get same amount, 2NaZ, and you can reuse it. And why we can use it? Because sodium chloride is very cheap compound. It is not costly. So it can be used to regenerate zeolites. So write down the reactions. It is again ion exchange method. Divya, I'll upload the recording. Okay. So you can go through the recording if you are facing network issues. So remember, in ion exchange method, we are using zeolite or permutate, which is hydrated sodium aluminium silicate. And the anionic part is aluminium silicate, which gets attached to metal ion. Metal ion means magnesium or calcium ions. Next, synthetic resins method. This is similar to the ion exchange method again. Nowadays, hard water is softened by using synthetic cation exchangers, as it is written here, cation exchangers. This method is more efficient than zeolite process. Both are ion exchange, but this is more efficient. Cation exchange resins contain large organic molecules with SO3H. So molecules of type RSO3H are known as resins. Resins means they have texture like resin. Resin, you must have seen, it is used, in food. So that's why that if you see resin, it is sticky material, thick sticky material, and the materials of this configuration RSO3H are of the same texture. So that's why these are termed as resins. And are water insoluble. They don't get dissolved in water. Ion exchange resin, RSO3H, which we talked about, is changed to RNA by treating with NaCl. So the first reaction is actually RSO3H plus NaCl. It gives you RNA, okay? This R and this Na. Okay? So we get RNA from reaction of the resin with NaCl. Now, if it is RNA, Na is highly electropositive. So R becomes anion. Why R becomes anion? Remember, otherwise alkyl groups are normally cations. Normally alkyl groups are cations. Moreover, we will be talking about in 12th standard when we will talk about Grignard reagent, very important reagent. There also R is treated as anion, and the reason is same what we are discussing here. Here sodium is highly electropositive, more electropositive than carbon. That's why the carbon part becomes anion. There also in Grignard reagent we have magnesium. Magnesium is highly electropositive. That's why the alkyl part becomes negative. So remember, R is anion. Alkyl part is anion in RNA. Now, because this is anion gets attached to the metal, and you get R2N. So again, the impurity gets converted to other compound, and the hardness is removed. Because we are using resins here for ion exchange, that's why this method is known as cationic resin method or ion exchange method or the resin method. Remember why we are using the word cationic here? Because here also in this case we are exchanging the cation. Cation means this one. This one. All these are cationic exchange methods, specifically first, third, and fourth. So I'm going through all four again. The first one is treatment with washing soda. Chloride and sulfate will cause permanent hardness, but carbonate will replace chloride or sulfate. So now there is no magnesium chloride, magnesium sulfate, etc. Hardness removed. So in first case, when you use washing soda, carbonate replaces anions. Second, Calgon's method, sodium hexametaphosphate. Here, the complex anion replaces the, for example, MgCl2 plus Na4P6O16 2 minus gives you Na2MgP4O18 2 minus plus 2 NaCl. So ion exchanged, replaced, anion replaced another anion. Okay. Now, if you remember, I said specifically first, third, and fourth are the ion exchange methods. Why I said second does not qualify too much for ion exchange, even though this is a type of ion exchange. The reason is that it is not complete ion exchange because out of these 4 sodiums, 2 sodiums get out to combine with NaCl. Reactions are important again. Okay. Third, ion exchange method with zeolite or permutate. These are hydrated sodium aluminum silicates. In this also the anionic part replaces the ion. anionic part replaces the ion. For example, if it is MgCl2, it replaces Cl2 and produces MgZ. In this case, remember, you can reproduce the or regenerate the permutate or zeolite by simply getting the product treated with sodium chloride. This one, synthetic resins method, the modern method. Here, instead of zeolite, we use synthetic resins. We need resins. So sometimes it is written as resins method also. Okay? Synthetic is not necessary. Don't get confused. Even if it is written as resins method, it is synthetic resins method. RSO3H. Here also, the cation becomes anion. Remember, in synthetic resin, R is cation. But when we get it reacted with NaCl, RNA is produced, that becomes anion. So specifically, if you see in this method, we say cation exchangers. Cation is exchanged by anion. So first you get RNA, then you get that RNA reacted with water. In water, the impurities react with this RNA, and R being anion gets attached to metal ion and separates out. Okay. Now H2O2, hydrogen peroxide. Again, hydrogen peroxide preparation methods, its properties are excluded from the syllabus. Storage of H2O2 is not written there. The questions might appear from this section. How H2O2 is stored. H2O2 decomposes slowly on exposure to light and is catalyzed in presence of light. Okay. And also in presence of metal surfaces or traces of alkali. So light catalyzes it, metal surfaces, traces of alkali. It decomposes into water and oxygen. It means we need to store hydrogen peroxide with some precautions. Hence, it is stored in wax-lined glass or plastic vessels. Wax-lined glass or plastic bottles means that if bottles are there, the inner lining here is of wax. So that there is no light. This wax is dark colored, not light colored. So it is stored in wax-lined glass or plastic vessels. Urea can be added as stabilizer. Stabilizer means to reduce the decomposition. A stabilizer here means that this is stable. H2O2 is stable, means it does not decompose. So urea is actually here in this case is a retard. Retard means it reduces the reaction. It reduces the reaction. Another very important point, it is kept away from dust. Simple dust, because dust can induce explosive decomposition of compound. Now, how this is something related to surface chemistry, which we will be talking. about in 12th standard. There are two reasons. Main reason that it is not stored in simple glass, dark glass, because in few cases it reacts. Okay? So that's why hydrogen peroxide is not stored in direct in dark colored glass. There are fluorides also which react with glass. So we will be talking about that in another chapter. So it is not that glass does not react with anything. Glass does react with few compounds. So the third part we were talking about, that if dust is added or hydrogen peroxide comes in contact with dust, the decomposition is increased by such a high rate that small explosion can take place. Dust acts as catalyst because it provides surface for the reaction. Powdered dust provides surface for the reaction. More about that in surface chemistry. Heavy water, that is D2O. D2O is nothing but the hydrogen, isotope of hydrogen having one proton and one neutron. Deuterium, yes, Shashwat, deuterium. D2O is extensively used as a moderator. Moderator means controller. In nuclear reactors, otherwise the reaction will be at very high rate. So we need to control the rate of reaction in nuclear reactors. For that, we use D2O. And in exchange reactions for the study of reaction mechanisms. Not very important, but moderator one is important. It can be prepared by exhaustive electrolysis of water or as a byproduct in some fertilizer industries. Because water contains some part traces of deuterium. That's why exhaustive electrolysis of water can give us deuterium, D2O. And it is also obtained as byproduct in some fertilizer industries. It is used for preparation of other deuterium compounds, for example, C2D2. C2D2 is similar to C2H2. Just replace hydrogen by deuterium. So this reaction actually happens like this with water. Like this. Now replace hydrogen by deuterium and write the reaction. Calcium carbide reacts with water, produces acetylene and lime. COH whole twice. Similarly, SO3 plus H2O gives you H2SO4. SO3 plus D2O will give you D2SO4. This is an easier way to memorize. No, not for all reactions, but most of the reactions. For most of the reactions where hydrogen H2O reacts, D2O will also react. Okay? Most of the reactions. Because isotopes have similar properties. It is just because D2O is present just in traces. That's why not many reactions we consider. Otherwise, the reactions are similar to the water. Next one is aluminum carbide reacts with water, produces methane and aluminum hydroxide. From that, get this reaction. Because syllabus has been reduced in this chapter, so whatever I am covering, everything is important. Teachers don't have much from this chapter to ask. So everything is important. To memorize all the reactions. Dihydrogen as a fuel. Hydrogen is very good fuel. It provides a lot of calories when it burns. The only problem is storage. Hydrogen is a gas. So same amount by mass. For example, if we consider the kilogram, 1 kilogram of 1 liter of petrol and 1 kilogram of hydrogen, the problem is that 1 kilogram of hydrogen will take a lot of space. And we need to liquefy the hydrogen to store it. So dihydrogen releases large quantity of heat on combustion. It is very good fuel. The data on energy released by combustion of fuels like dihydrogen, methane, LPG, etc. are compared in terms of the same amount in moles, mass, and volume as shown here. So if we compare these per mole, if we are talking about 1 mole of dihydrogen gives us 286 kilojoules energy. In liquid state, similar to 85. LPG gives too high, CH4 gives high, octane in liquid state gives high. But remember, 1 mole of hydrogen is nothing but just 2 grams. But 1 mole of methane will be 16 grams. So 286 you are getting only from 2 grams, 880 you are getting from 16 grams. So in that sense, hydrogen's efficiency is much higher than methane or octane or LPG because their molar masses are very high, multifold of CH4 even. So that's why if we compare on the basis of mass per gram you will see hydrogen's kilojoule energy is maximum. So for the same amount by mass, hydrogen is most efficient fuel out of these compared ones. Per liter it is less because yes, it is a gas. And in 1 liter, there will be very few molecules of hydrogen. Real comparison is by gram. So it is clear that on a mass for mass basis, hydrogen can release more energy than petrol, about 3 times. This is actually petrol obtained in liquid state. Okay, similar to petrol. 3 times energy for the same amount by mass. Moreover, pollutants in combustion of dihydrogen will be less than petrol. The only pollutant will be the oxides of dinitrogen due to presence of nitrogen as impurity with dihydrogen. So some nitrogen is present as impurity in hydrogen and that can get converted to oxides. Those will cause slight pollution but much less than as compared to by petrol. This pollutant, of course, can be minimized by injecting a small amount of water into the cylinder to lower the temperature so that the reaction between dinitrogen and dioxygen may not take place. This is written as an answer. The question is asked that how can you reduce the pollution when caused by nitrogen during combustion of hydrogen? You will say we can add some water so that the temperature is reduced and the reaction between dinitrogen and dioxygen will not take place. However, the mass of the containers in which dihydrogen will be kept must be taken into consideration, because dihydrogen requires specific storage conditions. So if we need to convert hydrogen from gas to liquid form, or if we have to store hydrogen in compressed form, gas compressed form, we will need special containers which will be much heavier than what we need to store petrol. A cylinder of compressed dihydrogen weighs about 30 times as much as tank of petrol. That's why I said that the weight of the cylinder to store hydrogen, compressed hydrogen, will be 30 times. So although the mass of the hydrogen required will be much less than petrol, but the mass of cylinder will be 30 times. So that's the problem. Also, dihydrogen gas is converted into liquid state by cooling to 20 Kelvin. 20 Kelvin is not a temperature which can be achieved in a practical sense. By using nitrogen, we have techniques that we can create minus 180 degree, okay, Celsius. But 20 Kelvin is just minus 253, which is not possible. So this would require expensive insulated tanks. Tanks of metal alloy like NaNi5, titanium and titanium hydride, magnesium and magnesium hydride, etc., are in use for storage of dihydrogen in small quantities only, not at large scale. Otherwise, we would have been able to use hydrogen in vehicles also. So these limitations have prompted researchers to search for alternative techniques to use dihydrogen as an efficient way, in an efficient way. Okay, let me see if I can continue. Okay, just this one. Yes, I think it will be completed. So hydrogen economy is an alternative to whatever problems we have discussed. Hydrogen economy is an alternative. The basic principle of hydrogen economy is the transportation and storage of energy in the form of liquid or gaseous dihydrogen. Advantage of hydrogen economy is that energy is transmitted in the form of dihydrogen and not as electric power. What is the advantage? The advantage is that when we transport electric power, there is a lot of loss of energy in transportation of electric power. 15 to 20% at least power is lost during transmission. But if we transport dihydrogen, there will not be any such loss. So that loss can be avoided. And this avoidance of the loss is known as hydrogen economy. This is economical in that sense. At large distances, when we have to transport electricity, there is huge loss of energy. In case of transportation of hydrogen, that loss will not be there, but certainly there will be other losses which will not be equal to the loss equal to the electric power. But certainly we need specific systems for that, which are not in place right now. So what is hydrogen economy? Hydrogen economy is avoidance of the loss or minimizing the loss of energy during transportation of electric power. So if we transport hydrogen in the form of liquid or gaseous state, that loss can be avoided. That is termed as hydrogen economy.